I know that Sheikh Kazarouni has asked you guys several times to recite salawat loud. In fact, it is one of my pet peeves, believe it or not, when we recite salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, and it's not as celebratory as it should be. So let's do a warm salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. ثانية على حب الزهراء. I hear the sisters' voices louder than the brothers. All together, salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. For those of you who may not know the meaning behind salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, I think it's important that we know that essentially what we're doing is sending greetings and praise to the Prophet and his progeny and his family. This is important because we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has more rights over you than you have over yourselves. Him being our messenger, him being our leader. It's important to understand that when we recite salawat, it's not just, it's actually it's more of a celebratory thing. You know, it's anytime there's praise, we should recite salawat. And so it's important that we not think of it as a somber, you know, type thing, you know, and that it be more, you know, praiseworthy. So, and we know that in the Holy Quran, when there are many verses which include إنما الملائكة يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما, right? We recite salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, right? So it's important that we understand the meaning behind it. Because when I was a kid, I used to just always say salawat and not really understand it. And I've always appreciated those who took the time to give a brief description. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا حبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. صلي على محمد وآل محمد. Ahsan, thank you, brother. On behalf of His Eminence Ayatollah Abdul Latif Birri, respected scholars, Mr. Chairman Haj Kamal Shrara, and the rest of the Islamic Institute of Knowledge Board, we welcome you to our nightly English program. And we hope that you will continue to support the English program that Islamic Institute of Knowledge has for you. Our program will begin nightly, and we ask that you, I understand it's a little difficult, but we ask that, you know, we start on time. Today, there was an incident with one of our reciters. Inshallah, he'll be here tomorrow. As mentioned before, we will be giving out iPads during this month to those who pay close attention. We are collecting all the responses, and please make sure that when you're writing your responses, that you consider the answer, that the actual answer is from the lecture. So the question's from the lecture, and then the answer is also from the lecture. And it's important that, you know, we understand that what we hope to take out of this is a better understanding of you know, what, you know, Ramadan is all about, what fasting is about, what it means to be a worshiper, all these various themes that our blessed speaker has given us. We encourage everyone to participate in the Q&A session following this program. Finally, we ask that you listeners be courteous to our speaker, and that we keep the hallway as quiet as possible. At this point, I'd like to recite another salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Our featured speaker, Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, is currently a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy, teaching world religions, and he holds a PhD in philosophy and a joint PhD in religion and social change concentration. He studied at the seminaries in Al-Najaf, Iraq, and Qom, Iran. Dr. Kazarouni has given presentations and lectures worldwide, and I frankly think that at the end of his lectures that we should all receive some type of college credit, because it is so well said, and I just feel really excited to be here. And so help me welcome our beloved Sheikh up to the podium with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I agree 100%.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I've been asked, in the absence of the brother who recites Quran, I would begin by reciting a small chapter before I start my own work. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan al-la'in ar-rajim. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. Wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. ليلة القدر خير من ألف شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. Indeed, we have revealed the Quran in the night of power, and you don't know what's the value or the importance of the night of power. The night of power is worth more than 1,000 months. During this night, angels descend with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they bring peace to people during that night. Sadaq Allahu al-Aliyyul Azim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. I think you need Brother Rashid to come back and tell you that this is not loud enough. الثالثة بأعلى أصواتكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Sisters, brothers, friends, colleagues, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In continuing my conversation that rested on analysis and assessment of the categories listing in the verse 183 Surah Al-Baqarah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Indeed, we have obligated fasting on you in the same manner that it was obligated on the nations before you, so that you may gain taqwa. I explained that in these four categories listed in the ayah, number one was the meaning of mu'min, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, what's iman and who is mu'min. I listed a number of characteristics and traits for the mu'mineen, and as I was trying to explain humility, which is the part of, it should be an inherent part of a believer, by implication, we had to spend one night assessing the notion of kibr and arrogance. Last night I went back to the verse itself and looked at the meaning of siyam, fasting, exactly what it means. Does it mean just abstinence from food and drink, or there is much more dynamic part to it that the abstinence by itself does not reflect? I looked at a number of ahadith and traditions that specifically underline that abstinence of food and drink is only the external manifestation of what is supposed to be happening from within, and touched upon the notion of the conflict. The inherent conflict that we have as human beings in our nature, that there is the conflict between the powers of evil and the powers of good. And naturally, the objective of fast was primarily to move us towards taqwa, which I define it as God-centered lifestyle, then the mere abstinence of food and drink is not enough. At the end of the conversation, somebody asked a question which I said I would address it, but I was hoping to address it tomorrow night. That was related to the third category that exists in the verse. Exactly what it means when Quran says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. It has been obligated exactly as it has been obligated to the nations and people before you. Is there such a thing as fasting in the previous nations? And particularly for the benefit of our conversation, what the religious movement or the religions that existed before Islam. Before we start, there are a number of provisos or reservations that we have to express so that we understand when we try to make a comparison where the comparison is correct and where the comparison is not correct. Number one, the challenge that we will face when we start comparing is that we are not trying to establish the mere individual act of salvation or the cultural behavior that used this starvation as part of that salvation. That's not the issue that we want to discuss. Anthropologists claim that artifacts found in various sites clearly indicate that on a personal level, this abstinence from food and drink was used as part of spiritual development. So that's not the issue. The focus or the theme of our discussion is the fasting on a structure and a protocol that we have in Islam. Either a few days specifically to be fasted, and during the fast, complete abstinence from food and drink. If there is a set time beginning to the end, the structure that we have in Islam. These are the two main points. When we start, the third issue is that when we start comparing between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, immediately we will find or face a number of challenges. There is only, this is well known, there is only one book of revelation that exists in the world, and that is Quran. All other books that we have within Christianity, Judaism, and other books, these are what we call compilations that authors and writers have put together. In the case of Christianity, even the oldest gospel was written by an individual that 35 years after, whether we accept crucifixion of Christ or not, after Christ began to compile. Biblical studies scholars claim that at most, we definitely cannot call them revelation. At most, we can call them inspiration. Nothing more, nothing less. So we have to be aware of this tension that ultimately is going to exist between one book that claims to be absolute revelation and another book that is compiled by individuals that not even present during the particular, say, messenger, be it Jesus or Moses and so on. That's the third issue. The fourth issue here, the changes that have taken place over time. Up to 1950s, we have popes, rabbis, grand rabbis, and so on, not only changing the calendar, they are changing the context of the fast and reducing it to make it more accessible or easier to be dealt with. So we have that issue as well. The final point that we have to address with regard to Christianity in particular and Judaism after the destruction of the Second Temple around just about 2,000 years ago, we will see that as far as Judaism goes, the tablets that were revealed to Prophet Musa والسلام, was destroyed in the Babylonian destruction of the first temple. No sign of the original book anymore. What they collected and compiled together during the Babylonian exiles in Iraq, and part of it coming back to Jerusalem, was again what the rabbis remembered from the old text, which was a compilation. They put them together and gave it some degree of reverence. So now we have some kind of a book that we can use. Christianity begins its development in an area in which Romans and Greeks influenced what we call the Hellenic civilization influence at that time. So the debate at the early history of Christianity, whether we should follow the Hebraic tradition, being Hebrew and from a Jewish community, or move to Hellenistic. Those of you who have read history of Christianity, the early debate between Paul and Peter is a classic example of a shift from Jewish tradition, Hebraic tradition, into more Greek and Roman tradition. And Hellenistic philosophy and Hellenistic culture dictated the early culture of Islam and Christianity, to the point that Christianity that we have today is the Paulian version of Christianity, not the original version. Remember, Paul, the tax collector, that did not exist or did not live during the life of Jesus, at least never met Jesus, during one of these trips from, say, Palestine or Jerusalem to Damascus, he receives an enlightenment, or he becomes enlightened, and then he becomes the strongest supporter of Christianity and moves towards redefining Christianity and restructuring it, because of his antipathy towards Jews, to move it from Hebraic tradition into more Hellenistic tradition. The consequence of this move becomes apparent early 4th century in Nicaea Council, where the beginning of divination of Jesus starts to be discussed. So the history of Christianity, when we talk about fasting and comparison between Islam and Christianity, it is very critical to be mindful of this reality. To add to the crisis is the absence of what we call a sacred language. Quran clearly defines itself as a sacred language, the Arabic. The original Bible, where the Jewish community or the Old Testament claimed to have an original language, sacred language, Hebrew. But in my debate with the Christian scholars, whether they are directly involved with the church or biblical studies or critical studies of Christianity, they all admit that we really don't have a sacred language. We don't know what was the original language that the book was revealed. A continuum is created where certainly we know Jesus was a Jew. So Whether that was the language in which Injil that we claim was revealed to, and it was in a Hebrew language, we don't know. He lived in a Hellenistic culture. Was it Greek language that was the language of this? We don't know. Jesus traveled in the area of Levant and associated with other Christians or people who came to convert. Whether it was their language, we have no idea. Certainly, these Gospels that at the moment it's prevalent between Christians are books that have been interpreted, first of all, compiled and authored by individuals, that they have collected these ideas from different sources, and this is why it comes the conflict occasionally even to the birth date of Jesus. The four Gospels cannot agree upon it, because the sources that they use are different. And so we must be mindful, we are not comparing revelation with revelation. We are comparing revelation with, at best, an inspiration. In the light of these restrictions, how do we establish whether there was some kind of fasting in the previous nation, Judaism, Christianity, and others? What we have to do, we have to work like anthropologists. In a sense, look at signs that exist now, to dig around and see other signs that might exist in books, literature, and so on, and try to construct and make up a picture. Then we will be able to say whether fasting existed before, didn't exist, or if it did, what was the structure, what was the parameters of the fasting, protocols, etc. We start with Buddhism. If you look, Buddhism and Hinduism, both of them have similar kind of literature. And if you look at their literature, certainly there are ample evidence to prove that the use of fasting in Buddhist faith, particularly by monks and laymen, during retreat and intensive meditation, it was used. But the difference is, it was used as a mean and as a help towards meditation, not as a direct goal in itself. So in their meditation, they wanted to improve themselves. They use fasting and abstinence from food and drink to help them in the intensive meditation, particularly in retreat. I have gone to retreat with a number of Buddhist monks in California, and I have seen them. They suddenly, when they get close to the period of intensive meditation, stop eating or drinking, and they go through this total abstinence as a mean of helping them going through this meditation. So fast as a way to support meditation exists in Buddhists as well as in Hindus. Hindus have various days in which they focus on it. We come to Christianity. Our focus is Christianity and Judaism, and then compare it to Islam. When we come to assess and analyze Christianity to establish what kind of a fast they have and whether this was something that the collective Christians adhere to or not, immediately we will face a problem. Two issues we have to bear in mind. When the statement was made by Quran around the end of the 6th and beginning of the 7th century, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, in the Revelation around 620, between 20 and 30, there were not so many denominations of Christians present at the time. There were desert fathers, monks, but primarily a single church dictated. Today, when we want to look at the literature, the expansive denominational existence makes it clear. It makes it difficult to be able for us to say whether Christians in total agree or disagree. I'll give you a few examples. When it comes to fasting, whether specifically for a particular period or long period, short period, or the time, we have Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. They certainly have 40 partial fast to commemorate the fast observed by Christ during the temptation in the desert. Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox. Roman Catholicism has its own unique approach, and particularly from 1960 onwards, 1950s, late 1950s and 1960s, Roman Catholic popes began to give various instruction to ease fasting and reduce its intensity and turn it into a partial fasting rather than that extensive fasting that existed at the time. So Roman Catholic fasting is a reduction of one's intake of food and possibly avoidance of meat on Ash Wednesday, which Ash Wednesday is 46 days before Easter, and 40 fasting days, because Sundays are not included. So 40 fasting days, these are the days that they fast before Easter. They don't have concurrent Roman Catholicism, does not have the old style of Catholics, that it was a fast on a long period of day from dawn to sunset, and nothing, absolutely nothing. We see this now in the Eastern Orthodox. They have this extensive fast, similar to Islam. And there are a number of statements made by the church leaders exactly reflecting our conversation last night, where the true fast is supposed to be starting organically structured from within, and the abstinence from food and drink outside should be a reflection of that abstinence from sin inside. Anglicans, these are primarily the British and the Church of England. They have fast around Lent and days of Ascension that they fast. But it's a unique structured fast. In most cases, as we see in other denominations, particularly Protestant, they have removed the clear instruction that existed in Christianity as a collective responsibility and obligation, and they turned it into individualistic, voluntary action, that you can fast if you want, and you can structure the fast the way you want. So the principle that existed has been turned. Eastern Orthodox, fasting is an important spiritual discipline which is close to our understanding of fast, and they say to unite body and soul, the inner conflict between what we call the material dimension and the spiritual dimension that were used to create the human nature. At the moment of Genesis, they say the only way we can do that and balance it is through fasting. The Eastern Orthodox are very, very close when it comes to the concept of fasting to us. Methodists, they don't believe in anything similar to what we have. What they say that an act of individual piety, nothing more, nothing less. Left to you to define it, structure it, what you want to avoid, what you don't want to avoid. When we come to the Protestant movement, we will see a totally different thing. The three major figures in the Reformation, Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli, the Swiss reformer, totally against fast as a collective way of cleansing yourself. Zwingli used to be known as the person, because he lived in Switzerland, would organize sausage parties during the days in which the old Catholics and the church used to fast, deliberately encouraging its followers to break the law. And they said that criticize fasting as inadequate to gain personal salvation. collectively rejected, but individualistic, left open for people to decide for themselves. Mormons, the Latter-day Saints, that those of you who have gone to Utah primarily focus over there, they have the belief that the fast on first Sunday of each month is an obligation. And the food that you don't eat on that day, the money that you save, you're supposed to pay to take it and give it to the church to be spent on the poor. This is what we have in Islam regarding what we call the social obligation during the fast. So as far as Christianity, to wrap up, as far as Christianity exists, yes, fasting did exist. There are a number of denominations within Christianity that believes in something similar to the fast that Islam prescribes, and others that they do not. The next of the Abrahamic faith is Judaism. Judaism suffers the same kind of things that Christianity suffers with. The absence of the original book, because once the temple was destroyed, the tablets gone. Although the rabbinic movement in the Babylonian exodus in Iraq, they tried to put something together, and this is why experts in Judaism, when it comes to the compilation of the book, they believe they came from the J source, the E source, the P source, and so on, and it's a compilation of things together. And it's reflected in the four major Gospels as well. They suffer from this critical issue. And if we look at Orthodox, Jewish Orthodox, they certainly have something similar to Islam. 6 days in a year that clearly designated for an absolute fast from a few of them. It starts from the night before sunset of the night before until the sunset of the night after. Yom Kippur, which is one of the major days of, revered days within the history of Judaism, is considered to be one of these days. So I've attended a number of ceremonies in Boulder with them, and I worked to see how they function. They start from the night before, and literally, which is the sundown, to the sundown after. Total abstinence from everything. And they engage in prayer, what we are supposed to do during the month of Ramadan. The Ashkenazi Jews that are primarily European Jews. These are Jews that either immigrated from Palestine to Europe, or the outcome of the expulsion of Jews and Muslims in 1492 from Spain, that they moved towards Europe and settled down. They have reduced that Orthodox approach to fasting and created a unique way of fasting partial fasting during certain days. Rosh Hashanah, for example, which is a Hebrew version of Ras Hashanah that we have, is another one of these days that it is used to fast and attempt to purify oneself. Jews also have commemorative fast, what they call the major destructions or events to remember historical calamities. The first destruction of the temple, the second destruction of the temple, and as a consequence of the second destruction of the temple, the Bar Kokhba, which is the revolt around 70 years of the contemporary calendar, that the Romans had to totally destroy and remove the Jews from Palestine and take them somewhere else. They use fasting as a way of remembering these calamities in the past. Reform Judaism today has included Holocaust as to be part of this kind of remembrance fasting. Ashkenazis have something new. Couples that they want to marry, the wedding day they have to fast. And the vow is taken at the end of the fast when the rabbi comes and officiates the marriage. So this is something different. Collectively, what happened? Islam comes. and reforms the institution of fasting. It removes, radically reforms, anything as a symbol of sadness, mourning, atonement of sin, a reminder of disaster, as well as self-mortification, except that are done by monks, not accepted. Removes it, simplifies it. Changes from this kind of purpose to purely as a way of directing human being or redirecting our life towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, becoming muttaqi and God-centric. It is not considered in Islam as a punishment. As a matter of fact, it is considered highly revered act of worship in itself that has a number of positive consequences when it comes to building our spirit. Fasting as a privilege that existed, for example, in Hinduism, in which Brahmins were given because of their unique position to fast, and everybody else was not allowed to fast, has been removed. Every person is expected to fast in Islam once they reach certain age and they are capable of going through the ritual or the protocol of fasting. So briefly speaking, the verse when it says يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم, certainly true. We may not be able, because of the absence of text, the original Injil or the original Torah, to precisely pinpoint what kind of protocol was used in Injil with regard to fasting, what kind of a structure was used in the original Torah. But habits that exist today, references to a number of verses within the four Gospels, and to commentary in the Pentateuch, in the Jewish Torah, certainly there is signs that fasting was part of the culture for purification. Other faith, Buddhists, Hindus, and others certainly have their own way of fasting. Again, in some cases similar, at least the logic and the rationale behind it is similar to what we have. But I have not seen any reference during my conversation with Christian leaders and Jewish leaders, Buddhists and Hindus, and a number of retreats that I've had with these individuals, ascetics. Father Eaton, the Roman Catholic priest in Colorado, has a monastery in the mountain near Aspen. I spend weeks with the monks over there. Not a single time they said that we fast for the sake of taqwa, in the meaning that we have for our fast. Yes, it as a way of self-sacrifice, mortification, ascension, etc., but not in this form. The rabbis that I had classes with during the days that I was responsible for the Abrahamic Initiative chapter at the Episcopal Church in Denver, the rabbis that I have worked with never, even the Orthodox rabbis, never said something about taqwa, but certainly as a way of soul purification of the soul and as a period of soul searching and redirecting one life, going away from material towards spiritual and towards God, was there. There was a narrative that existed. So the conclusion that I reach, certainly my research indicate what the verse claims to be true. Although the existence of a number of restrictions would not let us to say exactly in what form existed in Christianity, Judaism, and others. Buddhism has gone through reform, Judaism has gone through a number of reforms, Christianity has gone through a number of reforms, and Islam has a claim here to make against whether the true form, and we can use the contemporary understanding of fasting as a way to reflect and draw a picture that it did exist in the previous nations, and particularly Abrahamic faith. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I apologize for the kind of academic or purely being a lecture on history, but there was no other alternative but to make it clear that when Islam or Quran claims that it was part and parcel of the previous nations and religions, there are ample proof. We had to dig, like anthropologists, we had to dig and find out whether this was true or not.
Thank you, Doctor. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We now move on to the Q&A session. What's now, Rashid?
The flow starts and I'll
Let the flow start. Okay, so far we have what? Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and tonight. 4 days, 4 nights of correct answers. He's the holder of all the correct answers. We're not dumping the bad answers, by the way. So I'm thinking maybe by the end of the program of Dr. Kazarouni, maybe we'll do a drawing on the bad answers, just to keep you interested and see how that works. Okay, so again, 1 iPad every week. On Saturday, inshallah, next Saturday we'll do the drawing. 1 iPad every week for the correct answers that we have, and 2 gift certificates weekly. With that, we're going to start with Dr. Kazarouni's question for tonight. We will pass on.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you referenced the book during the Exodus from Babylon. Was that the Talmud that you're talking about?
Well, at the moment, if you look at what the Jews would call the Torah, or they think that the reference of Bible to the New Testament is offensive. Bible is supposed to be a reference to the Torah and at least the 5 books of the Pentateuch. What I was trying to explain is that not only the Orthodox or Jews have few days that they fast similar to ours, they also use fasting as a way to commemorate, as a way to commemorate events, calamitous events that happened, and the destruction of the temple is one of them, the twice destruction of the temple.
Thank you. He's objecting to me saying bad answers. He said wrong answers, not bad answers.
Both of them reflect power differentials, so somebody has to decide.
Yes. Okay, while the papers are being passed around, please write your name and phone number on each piece of paper, and when you're done, we will collect them from you, or by the end of the program, you can just pass them along to the... Yes, we haven't asked the question yet.
We're waiting for you to settle down.
Okay, Dr. Kazarouni, what is tonight's question?
Again, I must reiterate what I have said before. I don't want you to do any research. The answers are within the presentation that I had, and it's a simple question. List 2 or 3 religions that they have, none apart from Islam, that they have fast similar to Islam.
3 religions that are non-Islamic religions that have fasted.
Similar
2 or 3?
2 or 3.
So if you can... 2. So minimum is 2?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I list, and I deliberately, Brother Rashid, I started from Buddhism and Hinduism and came down to give them a broad perspective that you can use whatever you think or you see.
Again, it's 3 religions from the lecture that Dr. Kazarouni gave us. right, doctor?
Yes.
I mean, they can,
List. Yeah.
they can say Confucianism, but we're not going to take that.
No. I haven't included it. I don't think they have, because in my research, I don't think he has anything similar to the fast.
Okay. Please write your answer on a piece of paper that you're given with your name and phone number.
Religions
Two or three religions.
Yeah, that they have.
Other than
fast,
Muslims.
Yes, similar to Islam.
Similar to Islam. 2 or 3 religions. Okay. While you write the questions, the answer, hopefully it's the correct answer. While you write your answers down, we're going to take your questions. Okay. I know someone wants to make a statement because I received a message on that. Anybody would like to ask a question, please let me know.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
In Islam, are women supposed to wear a scarf or you can pin?
The code of dress in Islam has become one of the issues that these days people talk about. There are certainly a number of verses in the Holy Quran that clearly instructs both men and women to have a unique code of dress. And the code of dress prescribed for women, when you look at the interpretation and the exegesis, is clearly where what Islam allows the face and the hand to be an exception, the rest have to be covered.
Does the code of dress apply to men?
Yes.
Can you please?
The code of dress that applies to men, according to a number of opinions, would put a number of brothers in a difficulty. Shorts are not allowed. Short sleeves may not be allowed. The cover has to be, the only exception will be the hair. But they are the same when it comes to the way they should behave and gaze and approach the other individuals. And the code of dress is what we see from traditional ahadith that exists. It certainly puts a question mark on the way male behaves and dresses themselves in the West here.
Okay. Regarding fasting, you know, if in like Western ask you what's the purpose of fasting, what's the best answer to put it, you know, in a way to cross the message to their mind?
The verse itself clearly gives you the best answer. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you gain taqwa. Taqwa means when you reach a level where God becomes the central issue in your life. To reach a level in your understanding of the faith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes the central issue in your life.
Okay,
That's
so you did say yesterday that the meaning of taqwa is God-fearing.
No, I reject. I said I don't agree. Yes, I don't agree with those who interpret taqwa as God-fearing, because I believe a faith which predicates and rests on fear is a problematic faith. Okay. We have to move away from that kind of connotations, and instead of that say taqwa literally means to protect yourself. The only way, according to the verses in the Holy Quran, we gain such protection when we submit to the command of God absolute. Where the verse in the Holy Quran, in conversation with Shaitan, says, "Inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan." The true servant is the one that everything he or she has is for the sake of Allah. That's the level we want to reach.
Thank you. Can a woman lead the prayer, and if not, why not?
Well, again, this is a juristic opinion. Certainly a woman can lead a prayer for women. There is no problem. But once the male and females are there, it's the ramification, I mean, the whole trying to pray, with my due respect to the sisters, to pray behind a woman and at the same time try to focus and concentrate that you are doing it for the sake of Allah. It's just to avoid that possibility of distraction. They say it's not to be done. But there is no objection when the line is drawn and they pray together. There is a mosque recently organized in California by sisters, purely for the sisters. And Imam Jama'ah is a sister, so there is no problem.
So you mentioned in Judaism there is a tradition to commemorate sad days with fasting. Can you comment on Ashura fasting and other times that Shia Muslims fast?
There is a difference between the Shia's school of theology and the Sunni school of theology. Certainly, the Shias reject the fasting traditions as fabricated regarding all the recommendation of fasting on the day of Ashura. Say it's not allowed. But some Sunni school of thought clearly consider it as a day of happiness and as a thanksgiving, and a kind of thanksgiving that you have to fast. This is one of the debate. When you look at the tradition, certainly I don't remember seeing anywhere in the life of the Holy Prophet having a day of Ashura and fasting it. These are what we call the construction of a particular way of life that people, scholars come later, try to justify it and create these layers of theology.
Is that good enough? Any other questions?
Women sometimes they argue with you. They're saying that during the old time, during the Islamic time, even men used to wear turbans. So how come it was released from the men and it's not released from the women?
There are differences between the cultural code of dressing and the essential code of dressing. Hijab, Islam, if you look at the verses in the Holy Quran, does not specify the modality for hijab. It says what it's the goal and the purpose. The modality is not specified. Never in any tradition which says that women, they have to wear abaya or this form or that form. But they certainly have indicated that they have to dress modestly and in a way, because from an Islamic point of view, a world view, all of a body of a woman considered to be part of her beauty, it has to be covered. Only the exception, the hand and the face, that allows the woman to be active in society rather than prevent it. So hijab is not a way of preventing from women to come out and be active in society, it's just as a way of protection. Well, I wouldn't go there because aura has connotations, yeah. Aura has connotations. It's the beauty of a woman that covers the entire body, and hence it has to be protected. And there are windows that are allowed these beauties to express itself in a relationship that is permissible. Men have, in addition to the requirement, occasionally you see cultural Sudan. When you go, they're all wearing ammamas. You go to, say, Najaf, Iraq, or somewhere else, ammama specifies a unique tradition that deals with theologians, not ordinary people. So these are cultural issues.
Okay, I have two questions. Is this related to the topic or a different one? Same one?
Assalamu alaikum. So, other than Muslims will come and tell you, okay, a man's hair is a beauty for him. So how come in Islam the woman is considered, her hair is beautiful and covered, but the man's hair, what, he's like, it's not attractive? To some people it says like it is very attractive, and why not cover it? So how do you answer that part?
Well, we can make any claim we want. But the facts clearly indicate there is an industry specifically focused on production of means to beautify women's hair. Over $3 billion a year. There is no industry that deals with men's hair in the same manner. Baldness, you can envisage this as a sign of wisdom, whatever it is in men, but as soon as you go across the gender line in women, it certainly affects the beauty. So you can claim, we can claim anything we want, but the facts indicate otherwise.
I have a question here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
In Christianity, women were supposed to cover their hair, according to the third testimony in the Bible. Why is that changed after the death of St. Paul, if he is the latest saint to refine the Bible?
Well, I indicated during this lecture tonight that one of the problems that we have when we try to compare between Christianity and Islam is what we call the metamorphism that Christianity has gone through and the changes that has taken place. Remember, the same thing has happened with diet. Christianity that originally saw itself as part of the Jewish faith, that absolutely rejected pork, now it's a prevalent issue. There is no restriction on diet. There is no even form of diet. This is something that over the years have changed. These days, only certain group of women, like nuns and so on, they have to conform to their code of dress for themselves. The rest, unfortunately, this is part of the new civilization that sees no need to do so. So it's not purely Christianity, also the secularism of the culture adds to it as well.
This is Rashid's brother. He said he had a question, then he changed his mind.
I think he passes it to his brother Rashid will ask.
Like what year, I mean, what century they stopped wearing the hijab, the Christians?
It's a continuous process. Particularly after Reformation, we begin to see that strict regimental approach to the code of dress, in Europe at least, beginning to change. If you go back even to 1940s and 30s in the United States, and you look at the typical family structure, women, particularly in 1920s, they were wearing long skirts literally to the ankle, and the hair was covered with a large hat. So it was part of the tradition, but gradually, probably one could say the hippie movement of the 1960s. That was a transformative kind of date in which suddenly a revolution took place and a reaction to the old system. And everything went out of the window.
On sister's side, would anyone like to ask a question? Any more questions, anyone?
I think we have a speaker coming.
Abu Ashraf, do we have Dr. Gupta? Okay. We had a guest speaker supposed to be here at 11:45 to speak for a few minutes, but obviously he did not show up. It's okay. I want to thank every one of you for coming in tonight. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30. Please give me your answers before you walk out of here. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.